Shut up, old hag.
Hey! Back off!
The Montana wind
sorry,
carried the
Grandma.
smell of engine
should've
oil
been
and
there.
old regret. Kodiak Kane stood in his workshop, hands dark with grease,
Mom, this is
working the
incredible.
chrome on a
Thank you.
1987 Harley Panhead like a man trying to polish away 15 years of silence. The bike gleamed under the single overhead bulb, perfect in every detail, except one, it hadn't been ridden in over a decade. Just like its owner, it was built for the road, but had forgotten how to move forward. The workshop walls told the story he'd been running from, photographs yellowed with time. A Hell's Angels patched the death's head grinning in faded colors. Newspaper clippings from another life when Kodiak Reaper Kane had been a name that meant something in the Brotherhood. National President, the highest rank a man could hold in the Angels. 24 years wearing that patch with pride. Now at 67, he wore nothing but solitude. The phone on his workbench rang. The sound cut through the Montana silence like a knife through old leather. Kodiak stared at it. Nobody called this number. He'd made sure of that. This phone existed for one reason only, and in 15 years it had never rung. His hand hovered over the receiver, grease-stained fingers trembling in a way they never had when he'd faced down rival clubs or federal agents. He picked up. The voice on the other end was small, fragile, everything Evelyn Kane had never been. Kodiak, baby, it's Grandma. The wrench slipped from his other hand and clattered on the concrete floor. Evie, I'm sorry to call. I know it's been... Her voice cracked, not with age, with fear. Kodiak's entire body went rigid. Evelyn Kane didn't do fear. This was the woman who'd buried a husband killed at Normandy and raised 3 sons alone through the tail end of the Depression. This was the woman who'd taken in a 6-year-old boy after his parents died in a factory accident and turned him into a man. Fear wasn't in her vocabulary. What happened? I need you, baby. I need my grandson. 20 minutes later, Kodiak's truck was tearing down the mountain road, the panhead secured in the bed, everything he owned left behind without a second glance. The drive from Montana to Nevada was 8 hours of highway and memory. Kodiak kept the radio off. Silence was better. Silence didn't make him think about the last time he'd seen his grandmother. Except silence was exactly what made him remember. 15 years ago, Reno, Nevada, a different man. The memory came whether he wanted it or not. Evie's small house on the edge of town, Kodiak standing in her kitchen still wearing his road colors fresh from a run that had ended in blood and federal warrants. The kind of night that made men disappear. You need to understand, he'd said. The club needs me gone for a while. Heat's too heavy. Evie had stood at her sink back to him, hands gripping the counter. 84 years old and still stronger than most men half her age. That's not what I raised, she'd said quietly. What? She'd turned then. Eyes that had seen the Great Depression and World War II and the loss of everyone she'd loved looked at him with something worse than anger. Disappointment. I raised a boy who stood up for what's right, who protected people who couldn't protect themselves, who understood that power means responsibility. Her voice never rose. Somehow that made it cut deeper. You're not that boy anymore, Kodiak. You're just another man running from consequences. That's not fair. Fair. Now her voice did rise. You want to talk to me about fair? I buried your grandfather before you were born. I buried your mother and father. I raised you to be better than this violence, this life that treats people like they're disposable. And what did you become? The king of it. I protect my brothers. And who protects everyone else? Who protects the people your brothers hurt? The family's destroyed. You were 6 years old, Kodiak. 6. You came to me broken and I put you back together piece by piece. I taught you strength. I taught you honor. And you turned it into this. The words hung between them like smoke from a gun nobody could unfire. You're not the man I raised, Evie had said finally. And until you remember who that man was supposed to be, I don't think we have anything more to say to each other. Kodiak had left that night, rode north and never looked back. Pride was a hell of a thing. It could make a man choose the open road over the only family he had left. It could make 15 years disappear like water in the desert. The present came rushing back as Kodiak's truck crossed the Nevada state line. His hands gripped the steering wheel tighter. Evie had called. After everything, after 15 years of silence that had been his choice, his pride, his mistake, she had called. Because she needed him. Because someone had hurt her. The old Reaper stirred in his chest. The part of him that had led the Hells Angels for nearly a quarter century. The part that understood violence as a language and consequences as a sermon. Not yet, he told himself. Not until you know what you're dealing with. but his foot pressed harder on the accelerator anyway. Silver Point Diner sat on the edge of Reno, like it had grown there, all chrome and faded paint and the smell of coffee that had been brewing since the Eisenhower administration. Kodiak had eaten there as a kid. Evie used to bring him on Sundays after church back when she still believed church might save him from himself. The parking lot was half full. Lunch rush, normal people living normal lives. Kodiak pulled in and killed the engine. He sat for a moment looking at the diner through the windshield. Through the plate glass windows, he could see movement. Waitresses, customers, the rhythm of ordinary life continuing like the world wasn't full of edges sharp enough to cut. He'd called the hospital from the road. They'd told him Evelyn Kane had been treated and released. Minor burns, elevated heart rate, recommended follow-up with her cardiologist. They'd been professional, polite. They hadn't mentioned that an 89-year-old woman shouldn't have burns from soup or elevated heart rates from doing her job. Kodiak had asked where she was. They'd told him she'd insisted on going back to work. Of course she had. Evelyn Kane didn't know how to quit. He got out of the truck and stood in the parking lot, feeling every one of his 67 years settle into his bones. His leather jacket was worn soft, no colors on the back anymore. He'd left those behind the day he walked away from the club. But the scars underneath the jacket, those he'd kept. The door chimed when he pushed it open. The diner was exactly as he remembered. Red vinyl booths, black and white checkered floor, a jukebox in the corner that probably still played Patsy Cline and Johnny Cash, the smell of bacon grease and pee and decades of working-class dreams. And there behind the counter, wiping down a coffee pot with hands that shook just slightly, Evie. Kodiak's breath caught. She'd aged, of course she had. 15 years did that. But it wasn't the gray in her hair or the new lines around her eyes that stopped him cold. It was how small she looked. Evelyn Kane had always been a force of nature compressed into a 5'2" frame. She'd seemed 10 feet tall his whole childhood, immovable, eternal. Now she looked fragile, like a strong wind might carry her away. She hadn't seen him yet. She was focused on her work, moving carefully, deliberately. There was a bandage on her left forearm, the burn from the soup. Kodiak started to move toward her, then froze. Because 3 young men in the corner booth, expensive clothes, expensive watches, cheap smirks. One of them had just snapped his fingers at her. "Hey, Grandma, coffee's cold." Evie's shoulders tightened, but she turned pot in hand and moved toward them. "I'll get you a fresh cup, honey." Honey, the kid, mid-20s, dark hair, the kind of face that had never known a consequence, grinned at his friends. "You hear that? She called me honey, that's cute, real cute." His friends laughed. The sound had edges. Evie poured the coffee. Her hand was steady. Kodiak knew that steadiness. He'd seen it his whole life. It was the steadiness of someone who'd survived things these boys couldn't imagine. "There you go," she said quietly. The dark-haired kid, the leader Kodiak could tell 24 years reading group dynamics, told him that much, picked up the cup, took a sip, made a face. "Still tastes like dirt. I'm sorry, maybe you're just too old for this job, you know." The kid's voice was loud enough to carry. Other customers looked over. "I mean, how old are you, 90? Shouldn't you be in a home somewhere?" His friends laughed again, louder this time. Evie's face didn't change. "I'm 89 and I've been making coffee since before your parents were born, son. Maybe the problem's not the coffee." The kid's smile went cold. He stood up, tall, over 6 feet, the kind of size that had always gotten him what he wanted because people moved out of his way. "You got a mouth on you, old lady." "Dalton," one of his friends, nervous now. "Come on, man, let's just—" "Shut up, Garrett." Dalton stepped closer to Evie. She didn't back up. Kodiak saw her chin lift slightly, that stubborn Kane pride that had been passed down through generations. "I think you owe me an apology," Dalton said. "I think you need to sit down and finish your lunch like a grown man instead of a spoiled child." The diner had gone quiet, everyone watching now, the kind of silence that comes before something breaks. Dalton's face flushed red. "You know what, I've had enough of your—" He moved, just a step, just enough. His foot shot out. Evie was walking past with a full tray, 3 plates, coffee pot, the muscle memory of 40 years waitressing. She didn't see the foot until it was too late. She went down hard. The tray crashed. Ceramic exploded. Coffee spread across the checkered floor like spilled ink. But worse, so much worse, the soup. Today's special had been chicken noodle, hot enough to steam. The bowl had been on the edge of the tray. It went over Evie's left side, her arm, her shoulder, soaking through her uniform. She made a sound, small, hurt. The kind of sound that shouldn't come from someone who'd survived everything she'd survived. Dalton and his friends were laughing. "Oops," Dalton said. "Guess you really are too old for this job." He pulled out his wallet, threw a $5 bill on the floor next to Evie. "For the dry cleaning, Grandma." That's when Kodiak moved. He didn't run, didn't shout. He simply walked across the diner floor, boots loud in the silence, and went straight to Evie. She was trying to get up. Her left arm was red, already blistering. Her face was white with pain. Kodiak knelt beside her. "Evie." She looked up, saw him. Her eyes went wide. "Kodiak, baby, what are you?" "I'm here, I got you." He helped her up gently, his hands remembering how to be careful, how to touch someone like they mattered. He shrugged out of his leather jacket and draped it over her shoulders. The jacket was old, worn, soft, and it swallowed her small frame. Other customers were standing now. An older woman hurried over with napkins. The manager, a woman in her 50s, face tight with anger and fear, appeared with a first aid kit. "Evie, I'm so sorry, I didn't see." The manager stopped looking at Kodiak. "Who are you?" "Her grandson." Behind them, Dalton's voice cut through the concern. "Oh, great. Grandma called her biker boyfriend." Kodiak turned slowly. Dalton stood there, 6'2", muscled from expensive gym memberships and protein shakes, wearing confidence like armor. His friends flanked him. All three of them looked at Kodiak like he was a joke they were about to enjoy. They saw an old man, gray in his beard, lines carved deep around his eyes. 67 years of living printed on his face. They didn't see the patch he used to wear, the brothers he used to lead, the 24 years of understanding that some men only learn through pain. Kodiak looked at Dalton, just looked, didn't speak. The silence stretched. Dalton shifted his weight. The smirk flickered. "What?" he said. "You gonna do something, old man?" Kodiak turned back to Evie. The burns were first-degree painful but not dangerous. But her breathing was too fast, her pulse visible in her throat. "Linda," he said to the manager, "call an ambulance." "I don't need," Evie started. "Yes, you do." He helped her to a booth, supporting her weight like she weighed nothing. She was trembling, not from the burns, from shock, from weeks of this kind of treatment compounding into something her body couldn't carry anymore. But her hand on his arm was shaking, and her breathing was still too fast, and Kodiak knew what was happening before the manager said it. "Oh God, I think she's—" Evie's eyes rolled back. Kodiak caught her before she hit the floor. Evie, stay with me." Her pulse was racing under his fingers, rapid, irregular. Her lips were turning pale. "Ambulance is coming," someone shouted. Kodiak laid her down carefully, his military training from 40 years ago flooding back. Airway clear, breathing shallow but present, pulse thread and fast. Heart attack. The thought hit him like a bullet. She was having a heart attack. Because some privileged child had thought it was funny to hurt an old woman. Kodiak looked up, across the diner, straight at Dalton. Dalton's smirk was gone. He looked uncertain now, young, scared. It was just, "Get out," Kodiak said quietly. "Look, man, I didn't mean for get out." Something in Kodiak's voice made all three of them move. They grabbed their jackets and headed for the door, walking fast, trying not to run. At the entrance, Dalton paused, looked back. "She'll be fine. Old people have hard stuff all the time. It's not, if you're still here when I stand up," Kodiak said, his voice carrying across the diner like rolling thunder. "You won't walk out. You understand me, son?" Dalton left. Kodiak turned back to Evie, held her hand, felt her pulse starting to settle, heard the sirens approaching. "You're okay," he told her softly. "I'm here now." "I'm not going anywhere." Her eyes fluttered open, found his face. "You came," she whispered. "Always, Evie. I just took the long way." The emergency room at Reno General smelled like antiseptic and regret. Kodiak sat in the waiting area, hands clasped between his knees, staring at floor tiles worn smooth by decades of worried pacing. His leather jacket was still with Evie. He wore only his black t-shirt now, and the hospital's air conditioning raised goosebumps on his tattooed arms. The tattoos told their own story. Angel's wings across his shoulders, dates and names of brothers lost, a death's head over his heart, the permanent record of a life lived on the edge of American law. "Mr. Kane," he looked up. A doctor stood there, young, tired eyes that said she'd been on shift too long. "That's me." "I'm Dr. Patel. Your grandmother is stable." The relief hit him like a physical thing. "Can I see her?" "In a few minutes, I need to talk to you first." She sat down next to him, chart in her lap. Ms. Kane suffered what we call a cardiac event, not a full heart attack, but close. Her heart rate became dangerously elevated, likely due to acute stress combined with physical trauma. The burns. The burns were minor, first degree. They'll heal fine. But Mr. Kane, your grandmother has a pre-existing condition. Her heart is weak, has been for several years. She's on medication, but Dr. Patel paused. She's 89. Her heart can't handle this kind of stress. Another incident like today could be fatal. Kodiak's hands tightened. She told you what happened. She said she fell, but the pattern of burns the witnesses. Dr. Patel met his eyes. Someone hurt her. And it wasn't the first time, was it? No. She needs to stop working. The physical demands the stress. She can't. Dr. Patel frowned. Mr. Kane, I understand employment is important, but her life, you don't understand. Her medication costs $800 a month. Social Security doesn't cover it. She needs that job to afford the pills that keep her alive. The doctor's expression shifted. Understanding mixed with frustration. The kind of look healthcare workers got when they ran into the brick wall of American economics. There are programs. She's tried. She makes $40 a month, too much to qualify. I've seen the denial letters. Because he'd been going through Evie's mail for the last 2 hours while she was being examined. Sitting in her small house for the first time in 15 years, seeing how she lived, seeing the careful budget written in her neat handwriting, seeing the stack of medical bills she was paying off at $20 a month, seeing that she'd kept his room exactly as he'd left it. Dr. Patel was quiet for a moment. Then, I'll be honest with you. If Ms. Kane experiences another cardiac event like today's, the outcome will likely be much worse. She needs to eliminate stress from her life. That means no more working in an environment where she can be physically or emotionally abused. I understand. Do you? Because she goes back to that diner in 72 hours, or she loses her health insurance. And without insurance, those pills cost $1,200 a month. So you tell me, Mr. Kane, what exactly do you understand? It wasn't an attack, it was exhaustion. The exhaustion of a doctor who'd seen this equation too many times and knew all the answers were wrong. I understand, Kodiak said quietly, that I have 3 days to fix this. And how do you plan to do that? He didn't answer, didn't need to. The look in his eyes said enough. Dr. Patel stood. You can see her now, room 247. But Mr. Kane, she paused, whatever you're thinking of doing, make sure it's worth the cost. Evie looked impossibly small in the hospital bed. They'd hooked her up to monitors, an IV in her arm, the soft beep of her heartbeat filling the room like a metronome counting down. Her left arm was properly bandaged now. Her color was better, but she looked old, really old. For the first time in Kodiak's memory, Evelyn Kane looked like a woman who'd lived 89 years. You gonna stand in the doorway all day, or you gonna come say hello? Her voice was weak but clear. Kodiak stepped inside and closed the door behind him. How you feeling? Like I got hit by a truck that was also on fire. She smiled faintly, but I felt worse. Kodiak pulled a chair to her bedside and sat. Up close, he could see the faint scars on her hands. Decades of hard work. A lifetime of doing what needed doing without complaint. How long? He asked quietly. Evie's silence was answer enough. Then 8 weeks, maybe 9. She told him everything. The escalating harassment. Dalton's crew. The fear. Linda's powerlessness against Harrison Merrick's influence. Why didn't you call me sooner? The question hung between them. The real question. The one that had 15 years of silence behind it. Evie's tears spilled over. Because I drove you away, she whispered. Because the last time we spoke, I told you that you weren't the man I raised. Because I spent 15 years regretting those words and not knowing how to take them back. Because I thought, her voice broke completely, I thought you hated me. Evie, no. And I didn't want to burden you. You built a life away from here, away from me. You had your reasons. I thought I could handle it myself. I've handled everything else myself for 90 years. Why should this be different? Kodiak felt something break inside his chest. Something that had been frozen for 15 years, suddenly cracking apart. I never hated you, he said. His voice was rough. Not for 1 second. I was ashamed. You were right about everything you said. I had become something you didn't raise. And instead of trying to be better, I ran. I let pride and shame keep me away from the only family I had left. That's on me, Evie. All of it. She squeezed his hand. We both made mistakes. Yeah, but mine cost us 15 years. Then let's not waste any more time. Evie's eyes held his. You're here now. That's what matters. A knock at the door interrupted them. Linda, the diner manager, poked her head in. She looked nervous. I'm sorry to interrupt. Evie, I wanted to make sure you were okay. Evie waved off the concern with her good hand. The gesture was pure Cain, stubborn to the bone. Linda stepped inside. She was carrying Evie's purse and an envelope. The doctor said you'll need a few days to recover. I wanted you to know that take all the time you need. Your job will be there. Thank you, Linda. But, Linda's hands twisted the envelope. I also need to give you this. I'm so sorry. She handed the envelope to Evie with shaking hands. Evie opened it, read. Her face went pale. Kodiak took the letter from her. It was from the diner's corporate office. Formal language, legal boilerplate. The essential message was clear. Due to recent incidents and customer complaints, Evelyn Kane's employment would be terminated effective in 72 hours unless she provided written proof of her ability to perform her duties without further incident. Customer complaints, Kodiak said flatly. Linda's face was miserable. Dalton's father called corporate. He said Evie had been rude to his son, that she'd created a hostile environment for customers, that she'd spilled food on Dalton and then fallen to create a scene. Her voice shook with anger. It's all lies. I told corporate that, but Harrison Merrick sits on our parent company's board. I'm just a manager. I can't. It's okay, Linda. Evie's voice was calm, too calm. I understand. I fought for you. I swear I did. But they're saying if you're not cleared by a doctor to return to full duties in 3 days, they're terminating you for inability to fulfill your job requirements. And if you lose the job, Linda didn't finish. She didn't need to. After Linda left, Kodiak and Evie sat in silence. The monitor beeped. The IV dripped. Outside the window, Reno continued its normal life oblivious. 3 days, Evie said finally. Kodiak stood. I'll figure something out. She stopped him with a look, seen his face, seen the look that used to make grown men in biker bars reconsider their life choices. Baby, whatever you're thinking, don't. Please, I don't want you in trouble because of me. He leaned down and kissed her forehead. I'll be back tomorrow. Where are you going? To take care of some things. He paused at the door, looked back at her. You know what you told me that last night? That I wasn't the man you raised. Kodiak, I didn't mean you were right. I wasn't. But maybe, he smiled faintly, maybe it's not too late to remember who he was supposed to be. Evie's house was exactly as Kodiak remembered, and that was somehow worse than if it had changed. Small, clean. The furniture was the same, the photographs on the walls, the throw blanket on the couch that she'd knitted in 1985. Everything preserved like a museum to a life that had stopped moving forward 15 years ago. Except in one way. Kodiak stood in the garage staring. The Harley was perfect. His 1987 Panhead. The bike he'd ridden from California to Alaska and back. The bike that had carried him through 20 years of brotherhood and bloodshed. The bike he'd left behind when he walked away from everything. Evie had kept it, more than kept it. She'd maintained it. The chrome gleamed, the leather seat was oiled and supple, the engine was clean parts organized, everything in working order. There was a log book on the workbench nearby. Kodiak opened it. His grandmother's handwriting. Neat entries every 2 weeks for 15 years. Changed oil, checked battery, ran engine for 30 minutes, replaced spark plugs, tightened chain, ran engine for 30 minutes, over and on for 15 years, keeping his bike alive, keeping it ready, just in case he came home. Kodiak's hands shook as he turned the pages. Found entries from last year, last month, last week. Kodiak's bike. Still waiting. I am too. He sat down hard on an old stool, put his head in his hands. Oh, Evie, he whispered to the empty garage. What did I do to deserve you? The bike didn't answer, but it didn't need to. The answer was written in 15 years of careful maintenance, in the hope of a woman who'd never stopped believing her grandson would remember the way home. Kodiak stood, walked to the workbench, found the keys hanging on their old hook. He straddled the panhead, turned the key, hit the ignition. The engine turned over on the first try, purred like it had been ridden yesterday, because Evie had made sure it would, because she'd known. He sat there in the garage, engine rumbling, and made a decision. 3 days to fix this. 3 days to make sure Evie never had to go back to that diner. 3 days to make sure Dalton Merrick and his father understood that some people couldn't be bullied without consequences. But he couldn't do it alone. Not anymore, though. He'd walked away from the Brotherhood, but maybe Maybe some bonds didn't break just because you stopped wearing the colors. Kodiak pulled out his phone, scrolled through contacts he hadn't called in 15 years, stared at names that brought back memories good and bad. His thumb hovered over one name, Boone McAllister, his former vice president, his best friend for 20 years before Kodiak had vanished into Montana without explanation. He pressed dial. The phone rang 3 times. Then, "This is Wrench." The voice was older, rougher, but unmistakable. "Boone, it's me." A long silence. Then Reaper. The old road name. The name Kodiak hadn't heard spoken aloud in 15 years. It hit different than he expected. Like coming home. Like opening an old wound. "Yeah, you've got some nerve calling this number." "I know. You walked away, brother. No explanation. No goodbye. Just gone. Some of the boys, they're still bitter. They think you're a traitor. They think, Boone." Another silence. "What do you need, Reaper?" Straight to it. That was Boone and always had been. "My grandmother's in trouble." "Miss Evie," Boone's voice changed immediately. "What kind of trouble?" Kodiak told him, and all of it. The bullying, the soup, the heart attack, the 72-hour deadline, Harrison Merrick's power play. When he finished, Boone was quiet for a long time. "Where are you?" he finally asked. "Reno, at Evie's place." "I'm in Sacramento. 3 hours out. I'll call the others." "Boone, I know I don't have the right to ask." "You don't, but Miss Evie does. That woman fed half the angels in Nevada back in the day. Never asked questions, never judged, just made sure we knew someone gave a damn." Boone's voice was hard. "Someone hurts her, they answer to the Brotherhood. Colors or no colors, you're still one of us, Reaper. And that means Evie is too." "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. Like I said, some of the boys are still bitter. This reunion might not be pretty, but we'll come, for her." The line went dead. Kodiak sat on the panhead in Evie's garage engine rumbling and felt something he hadn't felt in 15 years. Hope. And beneath it, darker and colder purpose. Dalton Merrick had made a mistake. He'd hurt someone Kodiak loved. Someone under his protection, whether Dalton knew it or not. And Kodiak Kane, former national president of the Hells Angels, the man they used to call Reaper because he always collected what was owed, was about to teach this spoiled child a lesson about consequences. The old way. The only way that mattered when law and justice had been bought and paid for. The Reaper way. He revved the engine once, the sound echoed off the garage walls like thunder promising rain. 3 days. The count had begun. The roadhouse sat 15 miles outside Reno, where the desert started to remember it was wild. It wasn't the kind of place that advertised. You either knew it was there, or you had no business finding it. Kodiak pulled the panhead into the gravel lot just after sunset. The bike's engine echoed off the low building, announcing his arrival like a war drum. 4 other motorcycles were already parked in a line. He recognized them all. Machines older than most marriages, maintained with the kind of devotion that came from understanding that some things were built to last if you treated them right. He killed the engine, sat for a moment in the settling dust and fading light. 15 years since he'd faced these men. 15 years since he'd walked away from the only family he'd chosen for himself. The family he'd built in oil and blood and loyalty that went deeper than DNA. The door opened. A figure stepped out, backlit by the bar's neon. Big, barrel-chested, moving like violence was always an option, but rarely necessary. Boone McAllister. Wrench. 64 years old and still built like a man who could tear an engine apart with his bare hands, because he'd done it more times than he could count. They looked at each other across 20 feet of gravel and 15 years of silence. "You gonna sit on that bike all night?" Boone called out. "Or you gonna come inside and face the music?" Kodiak dismounted. Crossed the lot. Each step felt like walking toward a firing squad and a family reunion at the same time. When he got close enough, Boone's face was visible in the bar light. Older, more gray in the beard, lines carved deeper, but the eyes were the same, sharp, assessing, missing nothing. "You look like Hell, Reaper." "You look like you ate hell and asked for seconds." Boone's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. "Fair enough." They stood there, 2 old men who'd bled together and built something together, and watched it fall apart when one of them disappeared. Then Boone extended his hand. Kodiak took it. The handshake lasted longer than necessary. Said more than words could. Boone's grip was still strong enough to bend steel. Kodiak's was strong enough to meet it. "Come on," Boone said finally. "Let's get this over with." Inside the roadhouse was exactly as Kodiak remembered. Dark wood, Darker memories. The smell of spilled beer and old smoke that had soaked into the walls back when smoking indoors was still legal. A jukebox in the corner playing Willie Nelson, because Willie understood outlaws better than the law ever would. Three men sat at a table in the back. Declan O'Rourke, Saint, 68, built like a fence post, eyes that had seen combat in 2 different wars and learned that killing was easy, but living with it was the hard part. Axel Dvorak, nomad, 62, lean and dangerous, the kind of man who could disappear into any crowd and emerge exactly where you didn't want him to be. Winston Hargrove, Doc, 70 years old, hands that had patched up more bullet wounds and knife cuts than most emergency rooms faced, that looked like old leather left in the sun. They all looked up when Kodiak walked in. Nobody smiled. Kodiak stopped in front of the table, waited. This was their territory now, their call to make. Saint spoke first. His voice was gravel wrapped in barbed wire. 15 years. Yeah. No word, no explanation. Just gone. Yeah. You know what that did to the club? Saint's jaw was tight. Federal heat was all over us. You were supposed to be our leader, our president, and you vanished like smoke. Left us to deal with the aftermath. I know. Do you pardon? Saint stood. He wasn't a tall man, but he had the kind of presence that made height irrelevant. We lost chapters, lost brothers, had to rebuild from scratch while RICO charges hung over our heads like a guillotine. And where were you, Montana? Hiding. I wasn't hiding. No, what do you call it? Running. Kodiak met Saint's eyes. I was running from the consequences, from the responsibility, from the fact that my decisions had put brothers in danger and I didn't know how to fix it. So I ran, and I left you holding the bag, and that was wrong, and I'm sorry. The apology hung in the air like gunsmoke. Nomad leaned back in his chair. Sorry doesn't bring back the Time Reaper. No, it doesn't. So why are we here? That was Doc, quiet voice. But when Doc spoke, people listened. You called Wrench. He called us. We came, but not for you. We came for Miss Evie. Woman sat with me when my daughter died. Didn't say anything, just sat. That kind of kindness you don't forget. The others nodded. Evie had touched all of them over the years, fed them, sheltered them, never judged, just loved them the way mothers were supposed to and sometimes didn't. She's in trouble, Kodiak said, and I can't fix it alone. Then tell us. Boone gestured to an empty chair. Sit down, talk. We'll decide if we're in. Kodiak sat, told them everything. The bullying, Dalton Merrick, the soup, the heart attack, the 72-hour deadline, Harrison Merrick's power and connections. When he finished, Saint was the first to speak. You know we can't just ride over there and tune these boys up, right? That's not how things work anymore. We do that, we're the ones in prison. I know. This Senator Merrick, Nomad said, he's connected, federal level. You go after his son, you're starting a war we can't win the old way. I know that too. So what's your play? Boone asked. Kodiak looked around the table. These men, his brothers, older now, gray and scarred and carrying decades of hard living in their bones, but still here, still loyal to something bigger than themselves. I need information first, he said. I need to know exactly who we're dealing with. Dalton's patterns, Harrison's vulnerabilities, how deep this goes. Doc pulled a notebook from his jacket, flipped it open. Already started. Made some calls on the drive over. Dalton Merrick, 26, trust fund baby. Father's money, mother's connections. 2 DUI arrests both expunged. 1 assault charge from college settled out of court. Pattern of entitled behavior with no consequences. The assault charge, Kodiak said. Details. Beat up his girlfriend's ex-boyfriend, put him in the hospital, broken jaw, cracked ribs. Family wanted to press charges. Harrison Merrick made it disappear, paid them off, got the record sealed. So he's got history of violence against people he thinks can't fight back. Doc's face was grim. Classic bully profile, big and strong and used to winning because daddy makes problems disappear. Nomad leaned forward. I can tail him, see where he goes, who he meets. If there's a pattern, I'll find it. I'll check the diner, Boone said. Talk to the manager, see if there's security footage. Might need evidence down the line. I'll reach out to some old contacts, Saint said slowly. Still got friends in law enforcement. See what they know about Harrison Merrick. Man's running for re-election. Politicians always have skeletons. Kodiak felt something loosen in his chest. Not relief exactly, but the weight of carrying this alone was lifting. What about you? Doc asked. What are you doing while we dig? Kodiak paused. Remembered Saint's earlier warning. I stay visible, he said. Make sure Evie knows she's not alone. Let Dalton and his crew know I'm watching. Saint nodded approval. Smart. Sometimes the best weapon is making your enemy nervous. But we need leverage, Boone added. Real leverage. Something that makes Harrison Merrick back off without us having to throw a single punch. We follow the money, Saint said. He pulled out his phone, scrolled through contacts. I know a guy, used to be a forensic accountant before he decided government work didn't pay enough. If Harrison's got financial skeletons, this guy can find them. That takes time. Everything worth doing takes time, Reaper. You taught us that. Saint's expression softened slightly. Look, I know you want to protect Miss Evie. We all do. But you called us because you can't do this alone. So let us help. The right way, the smart way. Kodiak looked around the table, saw the wisdom of age on every face. These men had survived decades of dangerous living by learning when to fight and when to think. Okay, he said, we do it smart, but we've got 72 hours. Then we better get started. Boone stood. Nomad, you're on surveillance. Saint, make your calls. Doc, dig into medical records, see if there are other victims we don't know about. I'll handle the diner footage. The meeting broke up, brothers moving with purpose. Kodiak felt it again, that old rhythm. The Brotherhood operating like a machine, each part knowing its function. As they headed for the door, Doc caught Kodiak's arm. You know this might not work right. His voice was quiet. We might dig and find nothing. Harrison Merrick might be clean. And then what? Then we find another way. And if there is no other way, if the only option is to do nothing and let Miss Evie lose her job and her insurance, and maybe her life. Kodiak met Doc's eyes. That's not an option. Reaper. She survived the Depression. She survived losing her husband to war. She raised 3 sons and a grandson who turned out to be a disappointment. She's worked her whole life, played by the rules, did everything right. And now some entitled punk thinks he can hurt her for fun because his daddy has money. Kodiak's voice was quiet but carried weight. No, that doesn't happen. Not while I'm breathing. Doc studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Just remember, being willing to die for something is easy. Being willing to live with the consequences, that's harder. Outside, the desert night was cold and clear. Stars overhead like scattered diamonds. The kind of sky that made you remember how small you were, and how big the world was, and how none of it mattered when someone you loved was hurting. Kodiak straddled the panhead. The engine started with a roar that felt like coming home. Boone walked over, put a hand on the handlebars. It's good to see you, brother, even under these circumstances. You too, Wrench. One more thing. Boone's face was serious. You need to know when word gets out that you're back, not everyone's going to be happy. There are brothers who felt betrayed, who think you should have stood with us instead of running. They might show up, might want words. I can handle it. I know you can, but it's going to happen. Be ready. Kodiak nodded, kicked the bike into gear. Reaper, Boone called as he started to pull away. We're with you on this, all the way, for Miss Evie. But after, we need to talk, really talk, about what happened, about why you left, about whether you're back for good or just passing through. I know. Do you? Kodiak looked back at his old friend, his brother. I ran once, Boone. I'm not running again. Whatever comes after this, I'll face it. I promise. The ride back to Reno gave him time to think, time to feel the panhead beneath him, the machine Evie had kept alive for 15 years because she'd known. Known he'd come home eventually. Known he'd need it. His phone buzzed. Text from Saint. Got a name. Investigator. Meeting tomorrow 9 a.m. Address attached. Then another text. From Nomad. Found Dalton. Country club. Drinking with friends. Will follow when he leaves. The pieces were moving. The Brotherhood was working. For the first time in 15 years, Kodiak wasn't alone. The hospital was quiet when he arrived. Visiting hours were technically over, but the night nurse recognized him from earlier and waved him through. Evie was awake, sitting up in bed, reading a paperback Western with large print. She looked up when he entered and smiled. You came back. Told you I would. How was the ride? She knew. Of course she knew. You didn't maintain a motorcycle for 15 years without understanding what it meant. Good. The panhead runs perfect. You've been taking care of her. Someone had to. Evie set down her book. She was waiting for you. We both were. Kodiak pulled up the chair, sat, took her hand. I saw some old friends tonight. Evie's eyes brightened. Boone, Yeah, and St. Nomad Doc. They all asked about you. Those boys. Her smile was warm. How are they? Older, grayer, meaner looking. Kodiak smiled. Same as ever, basically. And they're helping why? They are. We have got a plan. Gathering information. Finding leverage. We're going to make sure Dalton and his father understand there are consequences for what they did. Evie's smile faded slightly. Kodiak, I don't want you doing anything that'll get you in trouble. We're doing this the smart way, the legal way, but we're doing it. And if the legal way doesn't work, the question sat between them like a third person in the room. Then we'll figure something else out, Kodiak said carefully. Evie squeezed his hand. Baby, I've lived a good life, a full life. If this is how it ends, it's not. But if it is, I don't want you sacrificing your freedom or your future for me. Promise me. Promise me you won't do something stupid because you're trying to protect me. Kodiak looked at his grandmother, the woman who'd raised him, who'd given him every good thing he'd ever known about love and loyalty and what it meant to be a man worth being. I can't promise that if he... Kodiak, you raised me to stand up for people who can't stand up for themselves, to use whatever strength I have to protect the ones who need protecting. You taught me that a man is measured by how he treats people who can't do anything for him in return. His voice was steady. You can't ask me to ignore everything you taught me just because you're the one who needs protecting now. Evie's eyes filled with tears. You stubborn boy. Wonder where I got that from. She laughed through the tears, reached up and touched his face. You really aren't going anywhere, are you? No, ma'am, not this time. Good. She settled back against the pillows. Because I missed you every single day. I'd see something or hear something and think, I should tell Kodiak about that. And then remember you were gone. It hurt, like a tooth that never stopped aching. I'm sorry. I know, and I forgive you. I forgave you the day you left, if I'm being honest. I was just too proud to say it. She smiled sadly. Pride runs in this family, doesn't it? Like a genetic disease. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. The monitor beeped steadily. Evie's heart still beating, still fighting. Tell me about Montana, she said eventually. What did you do up there all alone? So he told her about the workshop, the solitude, the work he did on engines and motorcycles for locals who needed cheap repairs, the quiet days and quieter nights, the way he'd convinced himself he was better off alone. Were you, Evie asked, better off? No, I was just alone. There's a difference. Yes, there is. A nurse came in to check vitals. While she worked, Evie asked, have you eaten today? I'll grab something. Kodiak Kane, you eat properly. Don't make me get out of this bed and feed you myself. The nurse laughed. She's serious. She tried to get up earlier to help another patient. We had to convince her that's what we're here for. That sounds like her. After the nurse left, Kodiak stood. I should let you rest. Will you come back tomorrow? First thing. And you'll be careful, whatever you and the boys are planning. As careful as I can be. That's not very reassuring. It's the best I can do. Evie looked at him for a long moment. Then, your grandfather, the one who died at Normandy, he was a lot like you. Strong, stubborn, protective. He wrote me letters from the war. In one of them, he said something I've never forgotten. He said, I'd rather die standing for something than live kneeling for nothing. Kodiak felt his throat tighten. I was so angry when they told me he was dead, Evie continued. Angry that he'd left me, that he'd chosen duty over coming home to me. But as I got older, I understood. Some men are built to stand, and if you try to make them kneel, you break something essential in them. She reached out and took his hand again. You're like him. You always have been, and I was wrong to ask you to be anything else. So whatever you need to do to make this right, you do it. Just promise me one thing. What? Come back. However this ends, you come back to me. We've lost enough time already. Kodiak leaned down and kissed her forehead. I promise. The next morning came cold and clear. Kodiak met Saint at a coffee shop downtown at 9 sharp. The investigator was not what he expected. Maxwell Reeves looked like a high school chemistry teacher. Wire-rimmed glasses, cardigan sweater, soft hands that had never thrown a punch. But his eyes were sharp, and when he opened his laptop, his fingers moved like a concert pianist. So, Maxwell said, sipping his coffee, you want to know about Harrison Merrick? Everything, Saint said. That's a lot. The man's been in politics for 20 years, senator for 12. Before that, state legislature. Before that, lawyer. He's very well connected. We know all that, Kodiak said. We need to know what's not in the public record. Maxwell smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Well, that's where things get interesting. He turned the laptop so they could see. Spreadsheets, bank statements, corporate filings. Harrison Merrick is rich, Maxwell said, but not as rich as he wants people to think. His Senate salary is public record, not much. But he maintains a lifestyle that costs about 3 times that. Big house, country club, private schools for the grandkids, expensive cars. Where's the money coming from? Saint asked. That's the question, isn't it? Officially investment income. He's got holdings in several companies, all legitimate on paper. But when you dig deeper, Maxwell's fingers flew across the keyboard. These companies, they're shells, holding companies that own other holding companies. Classic money laundering structure. Kodiak leaned forward. Laundering what? That's what I'm trying to figure out. But I did find something interesting. Maxwell pulled up another document. 3 months ago, Merrick received a payment of $500,000 from a consulting firm in Delaware. The firm doesn't appear to have any actual business. No employees, no office, just a registered agent and a bank account. Who owns the firm? Can't tell yet. Buried under layers of corporate paperwork, but I'll find it. Maxwell looked up. Whatever Merrick is into, it's dirty, and he's working very hard to hide it. How long until you can prove it? Depends on how deep it goes. Could be days, could be weeks. We don't have weeks, Kodiak said. We have 48 hours. Maxwell closed his laptop. Then I better work fast, but I need something in return. What? When this breaks, and it will break, I get the story, exclusive. I used to be a journalist before I went into forensic accounting. This kind of corruption story, it's career-making. Saint looked at Kodiak. Kodiak nodded. You got it, Saint said. Just find us something we can use. After Maxwell left, Saint and Kodiak sat in the coffee shop. What do you think? Saint asked. I think Harrison Merrick is dirty, but I also think he's smart. He wouldn't have survived this long if he wasn't careful. So we might not find anything in time. Yeah. Saint was quiet for a moment. Then there's another angle we haven't considered. What? The other victims. Doc's been making calls. There are at least 6 elderly people who've had run-ins with Dalton and his crew in the last 3 months. What if we could get them to come forward? Make a public case that there's a pattern. You think they'll talk. I think they're scared, but I also think there's strength in numbers. One person speaking up is a target. 6 people, that's a movement. Kodiak's phone buzzed, text from Nomad. Dalton's at gym, same one every morning, 7 to 9. Regular as clockwork. Spotted him? Then another text from Boone. Got the diner footage. It's clear as day. Dalton tripped her on purpose. Linda's willing to testify if we need her. Pieces are coming together, not fast enough, but moving. Okay, Kodiak said. Let's talk to the other victims, see if we can build something. They spent the rest of the morning tracking down names. Doc had done good work. 6 people, all elderly, all working class, all scared. The first one they visited was Lorraine Fitzgerald, 84, Irish immigrant, living in a nursing home on the east side of Reno. She was in a wheelchair when they met her in the common room. Small woman, gray hair, bright blue eyes that had seen too much and forgiven too little. You're here about the Merrick boy, she said when Saint introduced them. Yes, ma'am. He did this. She gestured to her leg. 3 months ago, parking lot outside the grocery store. He was walking out, not looking, talking on his phone. I asked him politely to watch where he was going. He called me an old hag and pushed me. I fell, broke my hip. Did you report it? Kodiak asked. To who? The police. They came. Took a statement in, said it was my word against his. When I insisted, a lawyer showed up. Harrison Merrick's lawyer. Told me if I pursued charges, they'd countersue for defamation. Said I'd lose my home. I got scared. I dropped it. We're gathering evidence, Saint said gently. We want to show there's a pattern. If you'd be willing to give a statement, no. Lorraine's voice was firm. I'm sorry, I can't. I'm too old to fight a senator. It would kill me. The stress alone. They thanked her and left. Got the same answer from the next 2 victims. Fear, deep and justified. By the time they reached the 4th victim, Kodiak was ready to give up, but Saint insisted they try. Margaret Walsh, 76, former school teacher, living alone in a small apartment near downtown. She invited them in, made tea, listened to their story. When they finished, she said, I'll do it. Ma'am, I'll give a statement. I'll testify if needed. That boy needs to learn he can't treat people like garbage just because his father has power. You understand the risks, Saint asked. I'm 76 years old. I taught high school English for 40 years. You think I'm afraid of some entitled brat and his corrupt father? Margaret's smile was steel. My husband died fighting in Korea, so people like me could stand up to people like them. I'm not going to dishonor his memory by staying quiet. They got her statement. Detailed, clear, damning. One down, not enough. But a start. Kodiak's phone rang as they were leaving Margaret's apartment. Unknown number. Yeah, Mr. Kane. This is Linda from the diner. I need to talk to you in person. It's about Evie. His stomach dropped. What's wrong? Nothing. I mean, she's fine, but something happened. Can you come to the diner? On my way. The diner was closed when Kodiak arrived. Linda let him in through the back door. She looked scared. What happened? Dalton came back about an hour ago with his father. Kodiak's hands clenched. And Harrison Merrick offered me money. A lot of money, $20,000. He said it was a generous settlement for any distress his son may have caused. In exchange, I had to fire Evie immediately and sign a non-disclosure agreement saying there was never any incident. What did you tell him? I told him to go to hell. Linda's chin was up. He said I was making a mistake, that he'd ruin my business, that I'd lose everything. I told him some things are more important than money. He didn't like that. Linda, but here's the thing. She pulled out her phone, showed him a recording. I recorded the whole conversation. Him offering the bribe, him threatening me, all of it. Kodiak stared at the phone. You recorded him trying to bribe you. Yes, and I already sent a copy to my lawyer and to my email. Cloud backup. The works. Linda's smile was fierce. You're not the only one who can fight dirty Mr. Kane. I've been running this diner for 20 years. You don't last that long without learning how to protect yourself. For the first time since this started, Kodiak laughed. Really laughed. You're amazing, you know that. I'm a survivor, and Evie is my friend. You don't mess with my friends. Kodiak's phone buzzed. Text from Maxwell the investigator. Found it. Call me. He called. Maxwell answered on the first ring. The Delaware Shell Company. It's owned by a lobbying firm in D.C. The lobbying firm represents mining interests. 3 months ago, Harrison Merrick voted against environmental regulations that would have restricted mining in Nevada. 2 weeks later, the $500,000 payment showed up. That's a bribe, yes, clear as day, and I've got the paper trail to prove it. Kodiak's mind was racing. Can you have a full report ready by tomorrow morning? Already working on it. Send copies to Saint when you're done, and to a journalist, someone who can't be bought. I know just the person. After the call ended, Kodiak stood in the empty diner, pieces falling into place. Linda's recording, Maxwell's financial evidence, Margaret Walsh's testimony, Boone's security footage, Doc's medical records from the other victims. It wasn't everything, but it was enough. Enough to build a case. Enough to show that Dalton Merrick was a pattern abuser and Harrison Merrick was a corrupt politician who would do anything to protect his son. Enough to fight back. His phone rang again. Nomad this time. Reaper, you need to see this. What? I followed Dalton to a bar. He's here with his crew, and they're talking, loud, drunk, and stupid. What are they saying? Planning something, talking about teaching that old bitch a lesson, making sure she never works again. They mentioned your name too, said if you keep poking around, they'll make you regret it. Ice ran down Kodiak's spine. Where are you? Nomad gave him the address. A dive bar on the north side of town. Stay on him, Kodiak said. Don't engage, just watch. Reaper, I'm on my way. He was out the door and on the panhead in seconds. The ride across town was fast and angry. The old rage building. The Reaper waking up, he forced himself to breathe, to think, to remember what Saint had said. Smart, not violent. Smart. But if Dalton was planning to hurt Evie again, the dive bar was exactly what it sounded like. Neon signs, sticky floors, the smell of desperation and bad decisions. Nomad was waiting outside, leaning against his bike. They're still in there, he said. Corner booth, getting drunker and stupider by the minute. How many? Dalton and 3 friends, including the 2 from the diner. Kodiak looked through the window, saw them, young, arrogant, laughing about something, planning to hurt an 89-year-old woman because she dared to talk back. Every instinct screamed at him to walk in there and make them understand pain. To teach them what happened when you messed with the wrong family. But that was the old way. The way that had led to federal charges and broken Brotherhood and 15 years of running. We wait, Kodiak said. For what? For them to leave, then we follow. See where they go, what they do. We document everything. And if they go after Miss Evie, then we stop them. But we do it smart. We call the cops, get it on record, make it official. Nomad studied him. You've changed. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just old enough to know the difference between strength and stupidity. They waited for 2 hours. Finally, Dalton and his crew stumbled out. Got into an expensive SUV. Dalton was driving, which was itself a crime given how drunk he was. Call it in, Kodiak said. Anonymous tip, drunk driver. Nomad made the call. Within 10 minutes, red and blue lights appeared. The SUV got pulled over 3 blocks away. Kodiak and Nomad watched from a distance as Dalton failed a field sobriety test. Watched as he got arrested. Watched as his friends called someone, probably Harrison, to come bail him out. That's going to cost him, Nomad said. 3rd DUI. Even with his father's connections, that's serious. Good, let him sweat. But as they rode away, Kodiak couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. That Dalton getting arrested would make him angrier, more dangerous. And there were still 24 hours until Evie's deadline. 24 hours for everything to go right, or everything to go wrong. The call came at 3 in the morning. Kodiak jerked awake in Evie's guest room, hand reaching for his phone before his eyes were fully open. 15 years of sleeping, light never went away. Once you learned to wake up ready for trouble, your body never forgot. Yeah, Reaper. Nomad's voice, tight, controlled. The tone that meant something had gone very wrong. Evie's gone. The words hit like a fist to the chest. Kodiak was on his feet, pulling on Jean's phone wedged between shoulder and ear. What do you mean gone? I was watching the hospital. Standard rotation. 2 a.m. 3 guys came out of the east entrance with someone in a wheelchair. Moved fast, wrong body language for orderlies. I got close enough to see it's her Reaper. They took her. Kodiak's vision went red at the edges. The old rage. The Reaper rage, the kind that had made men cross the street when they saw him coming. Where are they now? Lost them on Interstate 80, heading east. I tried to follow, but they made me split up, used multiple vehicles. Professional job. Dalton's not professional. No, but Daddy's money can buy professional. Kodiak was already moving. Boots, jacket, keys. The panhead was in the driveway, cold engine waiting. I'm calling the others, he said. Where are you? The warehouse district, near the old rail yard. Pulled over to call you. Stay there, I'm coming. He hung up. Dialed Boone. The phone rang 4 times before a sleep-rough voice answered. This better be important. They took her. Silence. Then I'm up. Where? Don't know yet. Nomad lost them on 80, eastbound. I'm heading to meet him now. I'll call Saint and Doc. We'll rendezvous at your location. Boone, if they hurt her, they won't. Not yet. She's leverage. They want something. What? You? They want you to back off. Stop digging. This is Harrison Merrick showing his teeth. Kodiak knew Boone was right. Knew it tactically, strategically. But knowing didn't cool the rage burning in his chest. I'm going to kill him. No, you're not. You're going to get Miss Evie back safe. Then we're going to destroy him the right way. The way that sticks. The panhead roared to life. Kodiak tore out of the driveway engine, screaming into the Nevada night. The warehouse district was abandoned this time of night. Skeletal buildings and empty lots. Nomad's bike was parked under a broken streetlight, the rider standing next to it like a statue carved from leather and bad intentions. Kodiak pulled up, killed the engine. Tell me everything. 3 guys, 2 big, 1 normal-sized, all dressed like hospital workers but moving wrong. 2 alert, 2 coordinated. They had a van waiting, white panel van, no plates visible. Driver stayed in the vehicle. They loaded her in, drove off. I followed for 15 minutes before they split up. Van went east, a black sedan went south, SUV went north. Classic evasion. You get anything? Partial plate identifying marks. Van had a rental company sticker. Enterprise. Reno location. That's it. Kodiak's phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Just you and me. Come alone or grandma pays. Address attached. Abandoned railroad depot 15 miles outside Reno. Let me guess, Nomad said, reading Kodiak's face. You got a message. Yeah. And you're thinking about going alone like they asked. Yeah. That's the stupidest thing you could possibly do. I know. Nomad pulled out his own phone. I'm calling the others. No, not yet. Kodiak looked at the text again. They're watching. They know we've been working together. If I show up with the whole crew, they'll know I didn't follow instructions. So what's your play? I go in alone. You and the others position around the perimeter, close enough to move if things go bad, far enough to stay invisible. Reaper. Her heart's weak. If she goes into cardiac arrest out there, he didn't finish. Didn't need to. Nomad studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, but we go in armed. And if I hear gunfire, I don't care what the plan was, we're coming in hot. Agreed. By the time they reached the depot, the others were already in position. Boone had parked his truck a quarter-mile away, watching the approach through binoculars. Saint was somewhere in the scrub brush with a hunting rifle he claimed was for varmints, but everyone knew had seen action in 2 different wars. Doc had the medical bag in his van ready to move if needed. The depot itself was a relic from when trains still mattered in this part of Nevada. Rusted tracks, collapsed loading platforms, a main building with most of its windows broken and weather-worn walls covered in graffiti. One light was on inside, flickering, probably a lantern. Kodiak parked the panhead 50 yards out, killed the engine. The silence that followed was total except for the wind moving through dead grass. He dismounted, checked the knife in his boot, the small pistol at the small of his back. Old habits, the kind that kept you alive when negotiations went south. Then he walked toward the light. The depot's main floor was vast and empty. His footsteps echoed off concrete and steel. The lantern sat in the center of the space, casting long shadows. And next to it in a chair was Evie. She was tied, hands behind her back, feet bound to the chair legs, duct tape across her mouth, but her eyes were open, alert, angry, Elif. Relief flooded through Kodiak so powerfully his knees almost buckled. That's far enough. The voice came from the shadows. Male, young, familiar. Dalton Merrick stepped into the light. He looked different than he had at the diner. Harder, meaner. The smirk was gone, replaced by something that might have been fear wearing a mask of bravado. Behind him, 2 men emerged. Big, professional. Not thugs contractors. The kind of muscle money could rent by the hour. You came, Dalton said. Good. Let her go. Let her go, just like that. Dalton laughed. The sound was wrong. Too high. Too tight. You've been causing problems, old man. You and your biker friends, following me, digging into my father's business, getting me arrested. You got yourself arrested, driving drunk. 3rd offense. My father fixed it, charges dropped, made some calls. Dalton moved closer. But he's tired of dealing with you. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave Nevada. Tonight, you and your crew. You're going to stop investigating, stop asking questions, stop existing in our world. And if I don't, Dalton gestured to Evie, then Grandma here has an accident, falls down some stairs, has another heart attack, whatever. Point is, she's fragile. Accidents happen to fragile old ladies. Kodiak looked past Dalton to the 2 contractors. Read their body language. They were professionals, but they weren't comfortable. This wasn't their kind of job. Kidnapping an elderly woman crossed lines even hired muscle had. Your father sent you to do this, Kodiak asked, or was this your idea? Does it matter? Yeah, it does. Because if this was your idea, you're stupider than I thought. And if it was his, he's more desperate than I realized. Dalton's face flushed. You don't talk about my father. Your father's a corrupt politician who takes bribes from mining companies and uses his power to make problems disappear. We've got the evidence, financial records, witness testimony, recording of him trying to bribe the diner manager. Kodiak's voice was calm, conversational. It's over, Dalton. You just don't know it yet. You're lying. Ask yourself, why would I come here alone if I was bluffing? Why would I risk it? Kodiak took a step forward. The contractors tensed, but didn't move. I came because you took something that belongs to me, and because I wanted to give you one chance to make this right. Make it right. Dalton pulled a gun from his waistband. Small caliber, shaky grip. Definitely not a professional. I'm the one with the gun, old man. I'm the one in control here. No, you're the one who's scared. I can see it. You're in over your head, and you know it. Another step forward. Your father sent you to clean up his mess. And you're here waving a gun around because you don't know what else to do. Shut up. Put the gun down, son. Untie my grandmother. Walk away. This doesn't have to end with you in prison. I said shut up. Dalton's hand was shaking now. The gun wavered. You think you're tough. You think because you used to run with the angels that makes you dangerous? You're just an old man. You're nothing. Kodiak stopped walking, stood perfectly still. You're right, he said quietly. I am old. 67 years, body full of scars and mistakes. But you know what all those years taught me, Dalton? They taught me the difference between violence and strength. Violence is easy. Any fool can pull a trigger. But strength is standing here unarmed, knowing that gun could end me and still choosing to give you a way out. There is no way out. There's always a way out, always a choice. You chose to hurt my grandmother because you thought you could. Because no one ever taught you that actions have consequences. Because your father always made your problems disappear. Kodiak's eyes held Dalton's. But I'm not going to disappear. And neither is the evidence. And neither are the witnesses. You pull that trigger, you'll spend the rest of your life in prison. Is that what you want? Dalton's face twisted. Rage and fear and confusion all fighting for control. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. Your father's going down. The only question is whether you go down with him or whether you make a different choice. Right here, right now. The gun shook harder. Dalton's breathing was ragged. Then a new voice cut through the tension. Dalton put the gun down. Everyone turned. Harrison Merrick stood in the depot entrance. Expensive suit, silver hair, the face of a man used to boardrooms and backroom deals. But the eyes were cold, calculating. Dad, I said put it down, now. Dalton lowered the gun. The relief on his face was obvious. Daddy was here. Daddy would fix it. Harrison walked into the light, looked at Kodiak, then at Evie, then back at Kodiak. Mr. Kane, this has gotten out of hand. You kidnapped my grandmother. I did no such thing. My son made an error in judgment. I'm here to correct it. By what? Making her disappear. Making me disappear. By offering you a deal. Harrison's voice was smooth, practiced. $500,000 wired to any account you specify. In exchange, you leave Nevada. You drop your investigation. You forget this ever happened. You think you can buy me? I think everyone has a price, Mr. Kane, and I think you're smart enough to know when you're outmatched. I have resources, connections. I can make your life very difficult, or I can make you rich. Your choice. Kodiak looked at Harrison Merrick, saw a man who'd spent his entire life believing that money and power could solve any problem. A man who'd never met a consequence he couldn't buy his way out of. I have a counteroffer, Kodiak said. I'm listening. You let Evie go, right now. You turn yourself into the FBI. You confess to accepting bribes, to obstruction of justice, to kidnapping. And maybe I convince the prosecutor to go easy on your son. Harrison laughed, actually laughed. You can't be serious, dead serious. You have no evidence. I have financial records showing $500,000 in suspicious payments. I have a recording of you trying to bribe a witness. I have testimony from multiple victims of your son's abuse. I have security footage of assault. I have enough to bury you, Senator. For the first time, Harrison's confidence flickered. You're bluffing. Am I your investigator, Maxwell Reeves? He's very good. Found things you thought were buried deep, and he's not the only one digging. By tomorrow morning, every news outlet in Nevada will have the full story. Senator Merrick, corrupt politician, has a nice ring to it. Harrison's face went red. You son of a... Dad. Dalton's voice was small, scared. Is it true the bribes the mining companies? Shut up, Dalton. Dad, he said, there's evidence. He said, I said, shut up. Harrison rounded on his son. This is your fault. If you just left that old woman alone, if you hadn't been so goddamn stupid. I was doing what you told me. You said to make sure the old people in that district didn't vote. You said to scare them. You said... The words hung in the air like a confession shouted in an empty church. Harrison realized his mistake immediately, looked around, saw Kodiak's expression. You've been targeting elderly voters, Kodiak said slowly, systematically, to suppress the vote in districts where you might lose. You can't prove. I can now. Your son just confessed, and you just confirmed it. Kodiak pulled out his phone, held it up. The recording app was running, had been since he'd entered the depot. Got every word. Harrison's face went white, then purple. You, he lunged, not at Kodiak, at Dalton, grabbed the gun from his son's hand. You've destroyed everything, Harrison screamed. Everything I built because you couldn't keep your mouth shut. He pointed the gun at Kodiak. Give me that phone. No. I'll kill you. I'll kill her. I'll kill everyone here. No, you won't. Kodiak's voice was steady. Because you're not a killin', Harrison. You're a politician. You're used to other people doing your dirty work. But when it comes down to it, you don't have the stomach for real violence. Don't test me. The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space, but it didn't come from Harrison's gun. It came from the shadows. Harrison dropped screaming, clutching his leg. The gun clattered away. Blood spread across the concrete. Saint emerged from a broken window rifle in hand. Told you I don't miss. Suddenly, the depot was full of motion. Boone burst through the front entrance. Nomad and Doc came from the sides. The two contractors put their hands up, immediately smart enough to know when they were outmatched. Doc went straight to Harrison's medical bag, already open. Through and through, you'll live, unfortunately. Boone cut Evie free. She ripped the tape from her mouth. Those idiots couldn't even tie knots right, she said, checking herself over. I've been working on the ropes for the last 10 minutes. She glared at Dalton, who stood frozen in shock. And you should be ashamed. Your mother raised you better than this. Dalton looked at his father, bleeding on the ground, at the bikers surrounding them, at Kodiak holding up the phone with the recording. Then he sat down hard and put his head in his hands. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. The FBI arrived 20 minutes later. Turned out Saint's old military buddy wasn't just a journalist. He was also friends with a federal prosecutor who'd been looking for a way to take down Harrison Merrick for years. They'd been listening to everything through Saint's phone line, had agents staged nearby, had been waiting for Harrison to incriminate himself, which he had, spectacularly. The special agent in charge, a woman named Torres, with steel gray hair and no patience for corruption, read Harrison his rights while medics loaded him into an ambulance under armed guard. Mr. Merrick, you're under arrest for kidnapping, attempted bribery of a federal witness, conspiracy to commit election fraud, and accepting illegal campaign contributions. You have the right to remain silent. Dalton was arrested too, but on lesser charges. The kidnapping was clearly his father's idea. The assault charges from the diner were his, but the prosecutor seemed willing to deal if he testified against Harrison. Before they put him in the patrol car, Dalton looked at Kodiak. I really am sorry about your grandmother, about everything. Sorry doesn't fix what you broke. I know, but I want to try. I don't want to be him. He gestured toward the ambulance carrying his father. I want to be better. Kodiak studied the young man, saw genuine remorse, genuine fear, and maybe buried deep the possibility of change. Then be better, he said. Make responsibility. Do the time. Make amends. And when you get out, be the man your mother hoped you'd be, not the man your father made you. Dalton nodded, tears on his face. Thank you. Don't thank me. Thank her. Kodiak nodded toward Evie. She's the one who taught me about second chances. After the federal vehicles left, the Brotherhood stood in the parking lot. Dawn was breaking over the desert, pink and gold light painting the sky. Well, Boone said, that was exciting. Too exciting, Doc muttered. He checked Evie 3 times already. Evie waved him off. I'm fine, just tired and hungry. Someone take me to breakfast. They went to the diner. Linda opened early just for them, made them the biggest breakfast Kodiak had seen in years. Eggs and bacon and hash browns and coffee that could strip paint. The crew gathered around the big corner booth, Evie in the middle, surrounded by bikers who looked like they could tear down buildings, but were currently arguing about whether sausage gravy was better than country gravy. This, Evie said, looking around at all of them, this is family. Damn right, Boone said. The news broke that afternoon. Maxwell Reeves' expose ran in 3 major newspapers simultaneously. Senator Harrison Merrick, corruption, bribery, election fraud, his son's assault pattern, the whole ugly story. By evening, Merrick had resigned. His lawyer had already started negotiating a plea deal. The diner's corporate office called Linda personally to apologize. Evie's job was safe. More than safe, they offered her a promotion to training coordinator with better pay and flexible hours. She accepted on the condition that she could still work the floor when she wanted to. I'm not ready to quit yet, she told Kodiak. I'll quit when I'm dead. Don't joke about that. Who's joking? 3 days later, Kodiak sat with Evie on her front porch, the same porch where they'd said goodbye 15 years ago. The same chairs, the same view of the street. But everything was different. You're staying, Evie said. Not a question, a statement. If you'll have me. On one condition. What's that? You stop running from from the Brotherhood, from yourself. She took his hand. You made mistakes. We all did. But you can't spend the rest of your life punishing yourself for being human. I left you for 15 years. And you came back. That's what matters. She squeezed his hand. Your grandfather used to say that a man's not defined by his mistakes. He's defined by what he does after. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the neighborhood wake up, kids heading to school, adults heading to work, normal life flowing around them. Boone talked to me, Evie said eventually. Said the club wants you back. I know. What did you tell him? That I needed to think about it. And have you, Kodiak considered. The Brotherhood had been his life for 24 years, leading them, riding with them, building something that mattered. But it had also led to violence, to federal investigations, to choices he regretted. I don't know if I can go back to that life, he said honestly. The club, the politics, all of it. Then don't, but don't cut yourself off from them either. They're your brothers. They showed up when you needed them. That counts for something. Yeah, it does. So find a middle ground. Be part of their lives without it consuming yours. You can do that, can't you? He smiled. When did you get so wise? I was born wise. You just weren't listening. That evening, Kodiak met the Brotherhood at the Roadhouse. All of them. Not just his old core crew, but other angels from surrounding chapters. 25 men in leather and denim filling the bar with the sound of engines and Brotherhood. When he walked in, the room went quiet. Then Boone stood, raised his beer. To the Reaper, who taught us that real strength isn't about fighting. It's about standing up when it matters most. To family. To family, the room echoed. They drank, talked, laughed, remembered old rides and old friends. Late in the evening, the current national president, a man named Garrett with more gray than black in his beard, pulled Kodiak aside. Heard what you did, how you handled Merrick. Smart, strategic. That's the kind of leadership we need. I'm not coming back to the club. I know, and I respect that. But I have a proposition. Garrett leaned against the bar. We need advisors. Older brothers who've been through the wars and learned from them. Men who can help us navigate the modern world without losing what makes us who we are. You interested? What would that look like? No colors, no obligation. Just, when we need wisdom, we call. You answer if you can. If you can't, no hard feelings. Think of it as being an elder statesman. Kodiak considered. It was a middle ground, a way to be part of the Brotherhood without being consumed by it. I can do that. Good. Garrett extended his hand. They shook. Welcome back, brother. On your terms. 6 months later, Kodiak stood in a courtroom watching Dalton Merrick get sentenced. The young man had taken a plea deal, testified against his father, shown genuine remorse. The judge gave him 2 years in minimum security plus 500 hours of community service at nursing homes after release. It was fair, maybe even generous. Harrison Merrick got 12 years in federal prison. No parole, no early release. The judge had been particularly harsh about the voter suppression scheme. Democracy depends on every citizen having an equal voice, she'd said. You tried to silence the elderly, the vulnerable, those you deemed inconvenient. That's not just corruption. It's an attack on the foundation of our society. After the sentencing, Dalton approached Kodiak in the hallway. I start my sentence next week, he said, but I wanted to thank you. For what? For giving me a choice that night at the depot. You could have killed me, could have let your friends kill me, but you gave me a chance to be better. You're giving yourself that chance. I just held the door open. Still, Dalton hesitated. I enrolled in college, online courses. I'm going to study social work. When I get out, I want to help people, elderly people especially. Maybe I can make up for some of what I did. That's good. That's real good, Dalton. Could you tell Miss Evie that I'm trying? You can tell her yourself. She visits the prison sometimes, volunteers reading to inmates. Dalton's eyes widened. She does. Says everyone deserves someone who believes in them, even people who've made mistakes. Thanksgiving that year was at Evie's house, but the small dining room couldn't contain everyone, so they set up tables in the backyard. Evie, Kodiak, the Brotherhood and their families, Linda from the diner, Margaret Walsh, the school teacher who'd been brave enough to testify, other victims who'd found their voices, Maxwell Reeves, who'd won a journalism award for his expose. Even Torres, the FBI agent, stopped by with her family. Never thought I'd have Thanksgiving with a bunch of bikers, she said, accepting a plate of turkey from Boone. Never thought I'd have Thanksgiving with a Fed, Boone shot back. But here we are. Everyone laughed. As the sun set and the desert cooled, Kodiak found himself standing apart from the crowd, watching, listening to the sound of family and friendship and second chances. Evie appeared beside him, took his hand. "You did good, baby. We did good. All of us. Yes, but you started it. You came home. I should have come home sooner. Maybe, or maybe you came home exactly when you were supposed to, when you were ready, when we both were." She leaned against him. "I'm proud of you. Your grandfather would be too." Kodiak felt his throat tighten. "I spent so long thinking I'd failed him. Failed you. Failed everyone. And now I think maybe failure isn't final. Maybe you can come back from it if you're willing to do the work." "That's the wisest thing you've said in 15 years. They stood together, watching their family chosen and blood celebrate around tables full of food and laughter. "You know what your grandfather's last letter said?" Evie asked. "The one he wrote before Normandy?" "No. He said, 'If I don't make it home, tell our boy that love is stronger than death. That family is stronger than distance. That doing the right thing is always worth the bond, and that it's never too late to come back to who you're meant to be.'" He couldn't have known. Maybe not, but he knew you, knew the blood running in your veins, knew that someday you'd need to hear those words. She squeezed his hand. "You came home, Kodiak. You stood up when it mattered. You protected your family. You gave a young man a chance at redemption. That's the man your grandfather was talking about. That's the man I raised. That's who you've always been under all the mistakes and running." Kodiak looked down at his grandmother, 89 years old, still standing, still teaching, still loving with a fierceness that time couldn't touch. "I love you, Evie. I love you too, baby. Always have, always will." Boone called out from the tables. "Reaper, get over here. We're about to start the stories about that time you rode from LA to Seattle in a thunderstorm, wearing nothing but chaps and a smile." "That is not what happened," Kodiak called back. "Prove it." Evie laughed. "Go on, be with your brothers. I'll be here when you get back." "You always are." As Kodiak walked toward the tables, toward the laughter and brotherhood and family, he felt something settle in his chest. Something that had been restless for 15 years. He was home. Not the Montana wilderness where he'd hidden from himself. Not the open road where he'd run from consequences. Here, in Reno, in Evie's backyard, surrounded by people who knew his worst and loved him anyway. This was home, and he was finally ready to stay. Later that night, after everyone had left and Evie had gone to bed, Kodiak sat in the garage with the panhead. The bike gleamed under the overhead light, 15 years of hope captured in chrome and oil. He opened the maintenance log one more time, flipped to the very last entry written just 3 days ago. Kodiak's bike, still waiting. "I am too." His phone buzzed, text from Dalton. "I start my sentence tomorrow. Scared, but ready. Thank you for showing me there's another way. Tell Miss Evie I'll make her proud." Kodiak typed back, "You already are, son. Keep walking toward the light." He set the phone down, looked at the photographs on the garage wall, his grandfather in uniform. Young Evie, fierce and beautiful. The Brotherhood in their glory days. And one he'd never seen before, new in a simple frame. It was from yesterday. The depot. After the arrests. Evie surrounded by the Brotherhood, all of them looking at her like she was the queen, and they were her knights. Someone had written on the back. He turned it over. "Family isn't blood, it's who shows up." Boone footsteps behind him. "You gonna sleep with that bike, or you coming to bed?" Evie stood in the doorway wrapped in her robe, but she was holding something, the leather jacket Kodiak had given her at the diner, the one she'd been wearing when she collapsed. "I had it cleaned," she said. "Figured you'd want it back." Kodiak stood, took the jacket, felt the familiar weight. "Keep it," he said. "Looks better on you anyway. It's about 6 sizes too big." "That's not what I meant." Evie smiled, walked to him, stood on her toes and kissed his cheek. "Your grandfather's jacket is in the hall closet," she said quietly. "The one from Normandy. I've kept it all these years. I was thinking, maybe it's time you had it." Kodiak's throat closed. "Evie, you're not replacing him, you're honoring him. There's a difference." She squeezed his hand. "He'd want you to have it. Want you to remember that cane men don't run forever. Eventually we plant our feet and make our stand." She turned to go, then paused. "One more thing. I'm selling this house." Kodiak's heart dropped. "What? Too big for an old woman. Too many stairs." Her eyes twinkled. "I found a nice little place. 2 bedrooms, one for me, One for my grandson, if he's interested. Evie, I don't answer now. Just think about it. She smiled. But either way, I'm keeping the garage. Can't let this bike go to waste, can I? She disappeared into the house. Kodiak stood alone in the garage, the panhead behind him. His grandfather's jacket waiting in the closet. A future he hadn't dared imagine opening like a road he'd finally earned the right to ride. He turned off the light. But before he did, he picked up the maintenance log, turned to the next blank page, pulled out a pen, oil changed, engine running strong, ready for tomorrow's ride. Kodiak. He closed the book. Tomorrow would bring new roads, new challenges, new chances to stand. But tonight, Kodiak Kane, former national president of the Hells Angels, former runner, current grandson, permanent family, walked into his grandmother's house and closed the door behind him. The panhead sat in darkness, chrome gleaming. Still perfect, still waiting. But this time it wouldn't wait long.